Okay, hello. We're about to do a read through of book 17 of Emily Wilson's translation of Homer's The Odyssey. And my cat wants to say a quick hello. Say hi, Camille. Wait a minute. Oh, where are you? There you are. There you are, kitty. You're hiding. Don't hide. There you are. She's shy, but she loves the Odyssey, and every time I come up to my attic to read, she tends to find me, so I wonder what she's picking up. And Camille, there's a dog in this chapter, so I'm not sure if you're going to like it. This book 17, Emily Wilson titles Insults and Abuse. So again, as always, there's a preview video that I make for you for each chapter, so you might want to avail yourselves of that first. And then feel free to listen and read. I encourage my students to listen and read simultaneously and annotate as you go, anything that stands out to you. So here goes, book 17. When newborn Dawn appeared with hands of flowers, Telemachus, Odysseus' son, fastened his handsome sandals on his feet, took up his sturdy spear that fit his hand, and headed out. He told the swineherd, "Grandpa, I must go into town to see my mother. Until we meet, I think she will not stop her lamentation, tears, and bitter sobbing. Now I need you to take this poor old stranger to town to beg his supper. Any man who feels like it can feed him. I cannot put up with everyone right now. I have too many worries. If he gets annoyed, the worse for him. I always like to tell the honest truth." And Odysseus replied, "My friend, I do not even want to stay. Beggars should wander round the town and country. I will get food from charitable people. I am too old to stay here as a farmhand, obeying orders from an overseer. This man will take me, as you told him to, as soon as I have warmed up by the fire. I only have these rags. The morning frost may do me in. You say the town is far." At that, Telemachus strode quickly out, thinking about his plan to hurt the suitors. And when he reached the royal house, he propped his spear against a pillar and went in, across the stony threshold. Eurycleia, the nurse, was first to notice his arrival, as she was laying fleeces on the chairs. Weeping, she rushed at him. The other women, owned by strong-willed Odysseus, assembled and kissed Telemachus's head and shoulders to welcome him. Then wise Penelope came from her bedroom, looking like a goddess, like Artemis or golden Aphrodite, and flung her arms around her darling son and wept. She kissed his face and shining eyes, and through her tears her words flew out. You came, Telemachus, sweet light. I was so sure that I would never see you anymore after you sailed to Pylos, secretly, not telling me, to get news of your father. Tell me, what have you seen?" Telemachus said, calmly, "Mother, do not try to make me upset or stir my feelings. I survived the danger. Go upstairs and take your bath, put on clean clothes, and take your women with you into your bedroom. Sacrifice and pray to all the gods that one day Zeus may grant revenge. Now, I'm going into town. I will invite the stranger who arrived right after me on Ithaca. I sent him ahead with brave men and told Piraeus to take him home and treat him with all kindness until I come." His flying words hit home. She washed, put on clean clothes, and prayed to all the gods and made them lavish sacrifices, asking that one day Zeus would bring revenge. Telemachus took up his spear and marched out through the hall, two swift dogs at his side. Athena poured unearthly grace upon him. Everyone was amazed to see him coming. The suitors gathered round and spoke to him in friendly tones. At heart, they meant him harm. Keeping away from most of them, he joined Mentor and Antiphus in Halitherses, who were his father's friends from long ago. They questioned him in detail. Then Piraeus approached with Theoclymenus, the stranger whom he had brought through town towards the center. At once Telemachus set out and rushed to stand beside the stranger. And Piraeus spoke first. Telemachus, send women quickly to my house, so I may give back the gifts that Menelaus gave you. But with caution, Telemachus replied, Piraeus, no, we do not know exactly what will happen, and if the suitors in my house by stealth should kill me and divide my father's wealth between themselves, I would prefer that you enjoy the gifts than any of those men. And if I kill them, planting doom among them, bring me the gifts, and we will both be happy. With this, he led the weary stranger back to his house, where he had laid their cloaks across chairs. They went to bathe. The slave girls washed them, rubbed them with oil, and dressed them in wool cloaks and tunics. Then they left the baths and sat on chairs. A girl brought out a golden pitcher and poured the washing water on their hands over a silver bowl. She set a table beside them, and a humble slave girl brought a generous array from their rich stores. Penelope was leaning on a chair beside the door, facing Telemachus, spinning fine strands of wool. They helped themselves to food and drink. When they had had enough, Penelope, preoccupied, spoke up. Telemachus, I will go upstairs now to lie down on my bed, which has become a bed of mourning, always stained with tears, since my Odysseus went off to Troy with those two sons of Atreus. But you have failed to tell me if you gathered news about your father's journey home. Now, tell me, before the suitors come. Telemachus answered her calmly. Mother, I will tell you. We went to Pylos, visiting King Nestor. He made me very welcome at his palace, under his roof, as if I were his son, returning after many years away. He cared for me like one of his own sons. But he said he had not heard anything from anyone about Odysseus, alive or dead. He sent me on with horses and carriage to the son of Atreus, great general Menelaus. There I saw Helen, for whose sake, by the will of the gods, the Greeks and Trojans suffered through the war. When Menelaus asked why I had come to glorious Sparta, I told him the truth in detail. And he answered, Stupid cowards, the bed they want to lie down in belongs to someone truly resolute. As when a deer lays down her newborn suckling fawns inside the leafy den of some fierce lion and goes off to the slopes and grassy valleys to graze. Then he comes back to his own bed and cruelly destroys both little ones. So will Odysseus destroy them all. By Father Zeus, Athena, and Apollo, I pray he is as strong as long ago on Lesbos when he wrestled Philomedes and hurled him to the ground, and all the Greeks cheered. May he fight the suitors that same way, so all of them will find their courtship ends badly and their lives soon. And I will answer your questions frankly and tell what I learned from the old sea god who can tell no lies. He said he saw him in distress. The nymph Calypso has him trapped upon her island inside her house. He cannot come back home to his own country, since he has no fleet or crew to row across the sea's broad back. That was what famous Menelaus said. My tasks accomplished, I sailed off. The gods gave me fair wind, which swiftly brought me home. His story stirred emotions in her heart. Then godlike Theoclymenus spoke up. My lady, wife of great Odysseus, this news is incomplete. I will reveal the whole truth with a prophecy. I swear by Zeus and hospitality, and by the hearth of great Odysseus, the place where I have come. He is already here in Ithaca, at rest or on his way. He must have learned what bad things they are doing, and he is plotting ruin for them all. I know because I saw a sign while sitting on board the ship. I told Telemachus. Penelope said, carefully, well, stranger, I hope this does come true. I would reward you with so much warmth and generosity that everyone you met would see your luck. Meanwhile, outside Odysseus's house, the suitors relished games of darts and discus, playing outside as usual, with no thought of others. Then, at dinner time, when flocks of sheep were trekking home from every field, led by their shepherds, Medon spoke. He was the suitors' favorite slave boy, whom they always brought to their feasts. My lords, you have enjoyed your games. Now come inside to eat. There is no harm in having meals at proper times. They followed his advice, stood up, and went inside the palace. They spread out their cloaks over the chairs and killed plump goats, large rams, some fatted pigs, and one domestic cow, and cooked them for a feast. Odysseus was making haste to leave the countryside for town. The swineherd spoke in lordly tones. Stranger, my master says that you can come to town today, as you desire, though I would rather leave you here to watch the farm, but I am nervous that the master may reproach me, and a master's curses fall heavily on a slave. Now we must go. The hour is late, and it will soon get colder, and the sun is sinking low. Odysseus answered, I understand. We can go now. You lead the way. But if you have a stick, give it to me to lean on, since I hear the path is slippery. With that, he slung his bag across his shoulders by its string. It was all tattered, full of holes. Eumaeus gave him a serviceable stick. They left. The dogs and herdsmen stayed to guard the farm. The swineherd led his master into town, resembling a poor old beggar, leaning upon a stick and dressed in dirty rags. They walked along the stony path near the town. They reached an ornate fountain, flowing with clear streams, where the people came for water. It had been built by Ithacus, Eurytus, and Polyctor. A circle of black poplar trees grew around it, nurtured by the spring. Cool water poured from the rocks above. There was an altar built over it in honor of the nymphs. All passerby made offerings to them. Melanthius, the son of Dolius, with two more herders, met them there. He was driving the finest goats to feed the suitors. On seeing them, he spoke abusively in brash, offensive language that enraged Odysseus. One scoundrel leads another. Makes sense. Gods join like things with like. You foul pig man. Where are you taking this old swine? A scrounger who will rub on many doors demanding scraps, not gifts for warriors. If you let me have him to guard my farm and muck the pens and toss the kids their fodder, he could drink whey and fatten his stick legs. But he does not want to work. He likes to traipse around town and beg for chow to stuff his greedy belly. I predict if he reaches the palace of Odysseus, a mass of hands will hurl stools at his head to pelt him through the house and bruise his ribs. With that, he sauntered past him and lunged out to kick him on the hip bone. What a fool. Odysseus was not pushed off the path. He stood there, fixed in place, and wondered whether to rush at him, armed with the stick, and kill him, or grab him by the ears and push him down onto the ground. Instead, he braced himself and kept his temper. When the swineherd saw Melanthius insulting him, he prayed, arms high, O fountain nymphs, O Zeus's daughters, if ever King Odysseus brought bones of lamb and goat in luscious fat for you, then now fulfill my prayer. May spirits guide him home. My master will put paid to all the bluster of this rude man who loafs round town and lets the animals be ruined by bad herders. Melanthius, the goatherd, sneered at him. Oh, very nice. This dog knows how to talk, and it has learned some tricks. One day I will take him by ship and row him far away from Ithaca, and get a heap of treasure by selling him. I wish Apollo would shoot silver arrows at Telemachus tomorrow in his house, or that the suitors would kill him. I am sure Odysseus is far away and never coming back. With that, he left him. He left them. They were walking slowly, and he rushed on ahead of them. He went inside his master's house and sat among the suitors with Eurymachus, his favorite. Slaves brought out a piece of meat for him, and a submissive house girl brought him bread. The swineherd and Odysseus went in and stood, surrounded by the strumming sound of the resounding lyre that Phemius was tuning for his song. Odysseus grabbed at the swineherd's hand and said, Eumaeus, this is Odysseus's splendid palace. It could be recognized among 1,000. The rooms are all connected, and the courtyard is fenced in by a wall with cornices, and there are sturdy double doors. No man could break through here. I noticed many men are feasting. I smell meat and hear the lyre, which gods have made companion to the feast. Eumaeus answered, Right, you are perceptive. Now, we must plan. Will you go inside first to join the suitors while I stay out here? Or do you want to wait? And I will go. But do not stay for too long. If someone sees you, you'll be pelted, maybe beaten up. Unflappable Odysseus said, Yes, I thought of that. You go. I will stay here. I've been hit before. I know hard knocks. I'm resilient. I suffered war and being lost at sea. So let this be. There is no way to hide a hungry belly. It is insistent, and the curse of hunger is why we sail across relentless seas and plunder other people. As they spoke, Argos, the dog that lay there, raised his head and ears. Odysseus had trained this dog, but with no benefit. He left too soon to march on holy Troy. The master gone, boys took the puppy out to hunt wild goats and deers and hares. But now he lay, neglected, without an owner, in a pile of dung from mules and cows. The slaves stored heaps of it outside the door until they fertilized the large estate. So Argos lay there, dirty, covered with fleas, and when he realized Odysseus was near, he wagged his tail and both his ears dropped back. He was too weak to move towards his master. At a distance Odysseus had noticed, and he wiped his tears away and hid them easily and said, Eumaeus, it is strange this dog is lying in the dung. He looks quite handsome, though it is hard to tell if he can run or if he is a table dog kept just for looks. Eumaeus, he replied, This dog belonged to someone who's died in foreign lands. If he were in good health, as when Odysseus abandoned him and went to Troy, you soon would see how quick and brave he used to be. He went to hunt in woodland, and he always caught his prey. His nose was marvelous. But now he is in bad condition, with his master gone, long dead. The women fail to care for him. Slaves do not want to do their proper work when masters are not watching them. Zeus halves our value on the day that makes us slaves. With that, the swineherd went inside the palace to join the noble suitors. 20 years had passed since Argos saw Odysseus, and now he saw him for the final time. And then suddenly, black death took hold of him. Telemachus first saw the swineherd coming. He gave a nod to tell him to come over. Glancing around, Eumaeus saw the stool used by the boy who carved the suitor's meat. He picked it up and set it down beside Telemachus's table. There he sat. Slave boy brought in meat and bread, and then Odysseus approached and stepped inside, looking like some poor, homeless, sad old man. He hobbled on his stick, then slumped himself down on the ash wood threshold, leaning back against the cypress doorpost, which a workman had smoothed and straightened long ago. The boy summoned the swineherd over and picked up a wheat loaf from the basket and as much meat as his hands could hold, and gave it to him. He said, "Please, take this food out to that stranger and tell him he should walk around the hall and beg from all the suitors. Shame is not a friend to those in need." Swineherd went and told Odysseus, "Telemachus gave you this food and says you ought to beg from all these suitors. Shame, he says, is not fitting for those who have to live by handouts." Odysseus prayed cautiously, "O Zeus, bless this Telemachus, and may he have all that his heart desires." And with both hands he took the food and set it at his feet. On top of his old ragged bag he ate and listened to the singer in the hall. As he was finished, the music stopped. The suitors shouted, and Athena stood beside Odysseus and prompted him to go among the suitors, begging scraps, to find out which of them were bad or good, although she had no thought of saving any one of the massacre which was to come. He went around and begged from left to right, holding his hand out like a practiced beggar. They gave him food in pity, and they wondered who this man was and whereabouts he came from. They asked each other. Melanthius, the goatherd, said, "You suitors of the queen, listen to me about this stranger here. I saw this man before. The swineherd brought him. I know no more. I do not know his background." Antinous began to scold the swineherd. "Pigman, you famous idiot. Why did you bring this man here? Do we not have already plenty of homeless people coming here to spoil our feasts? Is it not bad enough that they crowd round and eat your master's wealth? You had to ask this other one as well?" Eumaeus, you replied, "Antinous, you are a lord, but what you say is trash. Who would invite a stranger from abroad unless he had the skills to help other people, a prophet, doctor, or builder, or poet who can sing and bring delight? No one would ask a beggar. They bring only their hunger. Out of all the suitors, you are meanest to the slaves, especially me. But if the prudent queen and godlike prince still live here in this house, do not mind." Telemachus said, "Shush, Antinous does not deserve an answer. He is always picking a fight and goading on the others." Then turning to Antinous, he said, "You care for me so nicely, like a father. You told me I should force the stranger out. May no god make that happen. Go to him and give him something. I can spare the food Go on, I tell you. You should pay no heed to mother or the other household slaves belonging to my father. You are not concerned about them anyway. You want to gorge yourself, not share with other people. Antinous replied, You little show off. What nasty temper. What an awful comment. If all the suitors gave the same as me, this house could keep him checked for 3 whole months. He had a footstool underneath the table for resting his soft feet on while he feasted. He brandished it. The others all gave food and filled the beggar's bag. Odysseus had finished with his test. He could have walked back to the threshold, no harm done. Instead, he stood beside Antinous and said, Friend, give me something. You must be the best of all the Greeks. You look like royalty, so you should give more food than all the rest, and I will make you known throughout the world. I used to be a rich man with a palace. When needy beggars came from anywhere, no matter who they were, I gave them food. My slaves were numberless. My wealth was great. I had the life men say is happiness. But Zeus destroyed it all. He wanted to. He prompted me to travel with some pirates to Egypt. The long journey spelled my ruin. I moored my galleys in the river Nile and told my loyal men to stay and guard them and sent out scouts to all the lookout points, but they were too impulsive, and they sacked the beautiful Egyptian fields and seized women and children, and they killed the men. The screaming reached the town, the people heard and rushed to come and help. At dawn, the plain was all filled up with foot soldiers and horses and flashing bronze. Then Zeus, who loves the thunder, caused panic in my men, disastrous panic. Danger was all around us, and not one stood firm. The sharp bronze swords killed many men, and others were enslaved as laborers. But they gave me to somebody they met, a foreigner named Demeter, king of Cyprus. I came from there. Such is my tale of woe. Antinous replied, What god imposed this pest to spoil our feast? Stay over there, not near my table, or you can get lost. Get killed in Egypt or enslaved in Cyprus, you barefaced beggar. You come up to us, and these men give you treats unthinkingly. We have so much, and people do not mind sharing another person's wealth. Sharp-witted Odysseus drew back from him and said, You handsome idiot, you would not give a grain of salt from your own house. You sit enjoying someone else's food, and yet you will not give a crumb from this great banquet to me. Antinous was furious and scowling said, That does it. You insult me. You lost the chance to leave with dignity. He lifted up his stool and hurled it at Odysseus's right shoulder near his back. It did not knock him over. Like a rock he stood there, shook his head, and silently considered his revenge. Then he went back, sat on the threshold, and set down the bag, all full of food, and told them, Listen, suitors of this world-famous queen, I have to speak. When men are fighting for their own possessions, for cows or sheep, there is no shame in wounds. But now Antinous has wounded me because I came here hungry. Hunger brings such suffering to humans. If there are gods of the poor, or furies to avenge us, may he be struck by death instead of marriage. Antinous answered, Stranger, shut up or be off. If you keep talking, we young men will drag you across the palace by your hands and feet and have you flayed alive. But all the others reproached Antinous insistently. You ought not to have hit a poor old beggar. If he turns out to be a god from heaven, it will end badly. Gods disguise themselves as foreigners and strangers to a town to see who violates their holy laws and who is good. Antinous ignored the suitor's words. The blow increased the pain inside Telemachus's heart, but he let fall no tears. He calmly shook his head and thought about revenge. Penelope heard what had happened in the hall and said to all her slaves, "I hope Apollo shoots Antinous, just as he hit the beggar." And old Eurynomé replied, "If only our prayers were answered, none of them would live to see the dawn ride in upon her throne." Penelope said, "Yes, dear, they're all our enemies and mean to do us harm. Antinous is the worst. He is like death. Some poor old stranger wandered to this house and asked the men for food, compelled by need. The others helped him out and filled his bag. Antinous hurled a footstool at his shoulder." She had this conversation in her room with her attendants while Odysseus was eating dinner. Then she called the swineherd. "Eumaeus, have the stranger come to me so I may welcome him and ask if he has heard or witnessed anything about long-lost Odysseus. The stranger seems as if he must have traveled far." Eumaeus replied, "Your Majesty, I wish these men would quiet down. The tales the stranger tells would charm your heart. For 3 days and 3 nights I had him stay with me. He ran away from off a ship and came to my house first. He started to describe his sufferings and had not finished. Like a singer, blessed by gods with skill in storytelling, people watch him and hope that he will sing forever. So this man's tale enchanted me. He says Odysseus and he are old guest friends through their forefathers. This man lived in Crete, the home of Minos, and he traveled here a rambling route, with dangers compassed round. He says Odysseus is still alive and near here in the rich Thesprotian land, and he's bringing home a pile of treasure." Penelope said, "Call him over. Let him tell me in person. While the suitors have their fun here in my house or at the doors, their mood is festive. In their homes, they have untasted food and wine, which their house slaves devour, while they are flocking to our house each day to slaughter oxen, sheep, and goats, to feast and drink our wine with no restraint. Our wealth is decimated. There is no man here like Odysseus who could defend the house. But if Odysseus comes back to his own native land, he and his son will soon take vengeance for their violence." Telemachus sneezed loudly, and the noise resounded through the hall. Penelope laughed, and she told Eumaeus, "Call the stranger. My son just sneezed at what I said. You heard. It is a sign of death for all the suitors. No one can save them from their ruin now. But listen, if I find this stranger speaking the truth, give him nice clothes, a cloak and tunic." At that, the swineherd went and stood beside Odysseus. His words had wings. "Now, sir, Penelope, Telemachus's mother, has summoned you. She feels impelled to ask about her husband, painful though it is. If you tell her the truth, she will know. You will get clothes. You desperately need them. And you can ask for food all through the town. And fill your belly. Anyone who wants can give you scraps." Strong-willed Odysseus answered, "Eumaeus, I will tell the truth, the whole truth, to Penelope, and soon. I know about Odysseus. We shared in suffering. But I am very nervous about the rowdy suitors. Their aggression touches the iron sky. When I was walking across the hall just now, quite harmlessly, that man hurled something at me, and he hurt me. Telemachus did nothing to protect me, nor did anybody else. So now, tell her to stay right there until night falls, however eager she may be. At dusk, she can come nearer, sit beside the fire, and ask about her husband's journey home. I do have dirty clothes. You know it well, since it was you I came to first for help." The swineherd headed back. He crossed the threshold, and sharp Penelope said, Are you not bringing the traveler? Is something wrong? Is he too scared or shy? A homeless man can ill afford such shame. Eumaeus answered, His words were common sense. He wants to stay out of the suitors' way. They are aggressive. He says you should stay here until sunset. It is much better for you too, my queen, to speak to him alone. Penelope replied, The stranger is no fool, at least. There never were such bullies as these men, and they intend us harm. The swineherd went back to the crowd of suitors and approached Telemachus and tucked his head down close so no one else would hear. My friend, he said, I have to go and watch the pigs, and all your property and mine. You should take care of everything, but most of all yourself. Do not get hurt. So many mean you harm. I pray that Zeus obliterates them all before they injure us. Telemachus answered, May it be so. First eat, then go. Come back at dawn with animals for meat. The rest is up to me and up to gods. So then Eumaeus sat down on the stool and ate and drank, and then went back to his pigs, leaving the palace full of banqueters. It was already late, past afternoon. Music and dancing entertained the suitors.